Whoa. Hey guys, this is Rich. Um, before we get into the episode here, a little quick disclaimer. We at Stoner's Point do not condone the ideals of Islamophobia. We are not anti-Muslim. You may hear me at some points in the future. I do have hard feelings about the Prophet Muhammad, but then again, like I do not believe in Islamophobia per se. I believe that they have every right to practice their religion that a Jew or a Christian or a Buddhist has to practice theirs. Um, Also, at the end, I decided to end this episode with a speech from the UN, or the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, that he gave to the General Assembly during their emergency meeting that eventually produced this resolution that we talk about in the episode. It's a very moving speech, and I encourage and challenge every listener of this episode to stay through to the end of that speech. It's a bit long, but every bit of it is relevant. And by God, the man's at least, the Palestinians have earned at least that much. So listen to the episode, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and then stick around for the UN. I mean, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN. Thanks. Right on. So Mike, what do you want to go with the title for this episode? Are we gonna do Israel Part Two, The Empire Strikes Back, or are we going to do Israel Part Two, Hamas, The Phantom Menace?
Well, if we're not going to continue on with the adage of do unto others, I guess I like the Phantom Menace one better. Kind of plays on what they actually are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so this was initially, I just kind of we had a bit of a delay with audio problems on the previous episode. So I had to wait on Mike's audio, which he had to physically deliver because of, the size of the file. And while we were waiting on that, so much happened that it was like, well, we're already a shit ton behind. Like, as soon as we finished recording, the world went into shit. So yeah, was going to be an update, but it's just turned into a full on episode of things that we didn't go into full well or at all in the previous episode because things were still developing. They are still developing. Among the things that are developing is the death toll in Gaza. Mike, what are the latest numbers you saw?
Latest ones I saw was almost 6,000, a little over 6,000 Gazans dead, with like 3,000 and some children.
Bro, that's Friday's news. That's fucking old shit. Um, as of uh, today, so far, this morning, at least 9,061 killed, including 3,760 children, 2,326 women, 32,000 injured, including at least 6,300 children and 4,800 women. There's been 132 killed in the occupied West Bank. Israel's numbers are staying steady at 1,405.
Well, they went up by 14 the other day. A couple of the soldiers got killed in some tunnel attacks.
Uh huh.
Oh, yay, 14. Not exactly balancing the scales there, is it?
No, no. And which brings to what is the value of a Palestinian life, and what is the value of an Israeli life? Because clearly, if this was about eye for an eye, clearly they've reached that by now, right?
And technically, I would say yes. Now there's some other insights that you could put to it that might be able to justify a little bit more than just body for body. But I think it's a little much myself. But
Yep, that's Michael's hard take. It's a bit much. Um, so
Well, I mean, these guys they've been going back and forth forever and ever and ever, man. I mean, since the first guy set their tent down next to the other guy. I mean, but right now, I mean, the hostage count keeps going up. Yeah, I mean, so apparently the first attacks ain't doing the job. I mean, if you're going to attack people because they come in and attacked you and took hostages, and they continue to come in and take hostages, well, that is, of course, if those reports of the hostage number going up are actually true. Got something on that later too.
yeah, and assuming that Hamas is a thing that's making stuff happen on the Palestinians' behalf, um, can you like really does it not make sense to have to do something while you're being obliterated? Like, if the Israelis will bomb Palestinians indiscriminately for the hopes of harming Hamas, then maybe they'll be a little bit more hesitant to bomb Israelis indiscriminately for trying to get Hamas. The fact
Apparently
seems
not.
no, they do not care. you know,
Apparently, U.S. doesn't give a shit either.
well, Biden last night, actually for the first time, asked for a pause, like a humanitarian pause, for
The
to
U.S.
get
voted against it in the UN resolution.
yeah, but that was after, like Biden, the UN resolution happened days ago. Biden said this last night. His opinion has changed a little bit. At least get the prisoners out of there, for God's sake, man.
That's only because the polls came out and showed that his support from Arab Americans is slipping to nothing.
That's also possible. Again, the man's trying desperately to keep Trump out of the White House. That's basically his only job as president right now.
And I can understand that. And actually, the one damn thing I support him on.
It's his only job right now is keep Trump out. Like that's all he's supposed to be doing.
And yes, folks, that is coming from somebody that voted for him in 16. So, yeah.
So, hmm hmm
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk a little bit about the UN Security Council, I guess, right? Because that's kind of what we got to start with. Um, have yeah,
Now, hold that thought 1 second. Now, one little thing on some news. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but I'm going to try just for you. Let me stop that. I've got to see if I can pull up this picture and share it with my screen if I can find it. Give me just 1 second here.
I think I'm gonna put some bombs going off in Gaza. You know,
Oh, they've changed it. They took away the original image and only showing the ones that they've crossed out. But all right, there it is anyway.
there's what and where.
If you look on Discord, you should be able to see my screen. I'm sharing my screen. I'm hoping you'll be able to anyway. But for the other folks here, I'm showing a picture that has been circulating on the news circuit for quite some time, showing a gentleman carrying 5 children out of a bombed out area in Gaza. And it's been circulating and gaining support and, showing how horrible this shit is. And at face value, it's all great. Except for this particular picture has been found to be AI generated, which is being a big freaking problem in today's society, is exactly what is real fucking news. When you got AI printing news sources for you, and generating images that are going to be pulling people one direction or another, this is going to get a lot of support for the Palestinians here because this guy's pulling 5 kids out of a bombed out building. But it's AI. And, there's so many tales on this particular picture that shows that it's AI generated and not an actual picture. according, not only the fact that it's not been published in any major news journal source from this anywhere. It's one of these other, like Facebook or Twitter things, is where it got started at. One of those little clickbait deals. But yeah, when you're looking at images and stuff, look at the hands and the feet, because AI, like us, apparently has problems with drawing hands and feet. But definitely check out your sources a little bit more than just looking at a picture and get angry, because this has gotten a lot of people angry, and it's a fake freaking picture. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
all try to
Look,
take our news sources with a grain of salt in this.
yeah, I haven't looked at a single tweet. I haven't seen a single Facebook post in regards to this. I mean, like, mostly because my Facebook feed is like classical art memes and bullshit memes. I don't follow shit like that
Now,
on
this
Facebook.
this isn't where I seen this at. I was just saying that this was where this might have gotten its start from. It was one of those clickbait title things.
Right,
It could
right,
have been on
right.
Facebook,
And
could have been on Twitter,
I'm not
could have been on the
discrediting that.
news feed coming through your Google search engines or your whatever. It's one of those. They always have these things like, "Hey, you'll never believe what they found under the ice" or whatever. One of those titles. One of the clickbait titles. It's what
What
this came from.
I've been doing is I'll look at what the news says. So okay, somebody said this. So then I will find that video of somebody saying that, and I will watch the entirety of it. I've watched debates. I've watched all kinds of interviews. That's where I'm getting my news about it from.
Oh, I know
Um,
we are.
yeah, yeah. And I'm not. I know. And I'm saying that this is for the general public, Mike. For all the Stoners Point listeners out there. You got to really follow, and if you really want to have a good opinion on things are going, and because honestly, with AI out there and the way that they're able to do the fucking special effects nowadays and shit, and it's like you don't really know anything is real, right? We're assuming that there's a Middle East. I've never seen it. I've never been there. We're so we're we at some point in time you got to draw a line and it's like, okay, well, it could all be fucking fake, right? And yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to point this out because it was picked up by news sources at later, not the reputable ones. They double checked it. Apparently, this time they actually caught it and reported it as fake. But yeah, some of the lesser journals, lesser news sources, they were picking it up and running with it. But it did start from a fake. So I just want people to be sure that they check their stuff out before they go and start fighting their friends and
yeah,
family
yeah,
about some story that they saw, because it may or may not be real.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why it's like after and we're going to go into this in our Trump episode for sure. But after the fake news shit and the election results and all that shit, um, like it became kind of apparent how the news was. You couldn't really trust any in COVID and all that shit. You really just had to find news out on your own. You had to find sources you found reputable, or at least find sources that contradict, you know, each other's narrative, so you can see what pieces are in common. That's the only way you find any hint of what the truth out there is. And so everything I have, I base on what seems true, what feels right. What I mean, what I when things are corroborated by history, and especially things that fall into a historical pattern. Something I've seen before. For instance, well, not personally seen, but you can look at the history of, say, the persecution of the Jews in Nazi Germany, and you can see a pattern there, and you can follow that pattern in other types of genocides throughout history since. You see parts of the same pattern. So that's how I find out what I think is real and what's not. Is Does it fit the pattern? Does it is this does this seem to jive with what seems to be the general uh, course of actions? That humans just repeat shit over and over again. That's one thing about us. We're extremely predictable. So yeah,
Best
that's
way
my
I found
rant.
to get the actual facts is to watch two different news sources that are on opposite sides of the fence, and you take the details that they both share. Those are probably the facts. Everything else is probably addendum prove a point.
I have watched interviews over the past week with such people as Jordan Peterson and Vivek Ramaswamy, not because I find them to be credible people, but because I think that, and Ben Shapiro as well, I find them, and it's important to get a feel of what the mainstream right is saying, you know?
I wouldn't necessarily call Jordan Peterson a right wing. I mean, he's on the right side of the division, I would say. But I wouldn't put him on the same pedestal as like Ben Shapiro. I wouldn't. He ain't that far. Just because he's got some Christian esque beliefs on his side of things. I mean, Jordan Peterson's actually more logical than some of the other folks on the right hand
He
side.
does. He does have some logic, and I'll give him credit for this. In his interview with Piers Morgan, who usually I don't like Piers Morgan. He's a fucking mouthpiece for Rupert Murdoch and Fox News, but I've been watching a lot of his interviews because he's interviewing people that nobody else is interviewing. He's getting viewpoints, you know, he's giving people a platform. And like I said, as much as I don't really like the man, I've been watching the shit out of his interviews because he's interviewing people who I think have the opinion I need to hear, right? Have the opinion that you're not hearing everywhere else. Um, so yeah, his interview with Jordan Peterson was actually, it was a pretty good interview for Peterson. He unlike his normal behavior, he didn't claim to have a solution. He in fact claimed that he had no idea how to fix the problem. Now he did mention a lot about something that I had never heard of before called the Abraham Accords. Mike, have you looked into the Abraham Accords at all since yesterday when we talked?
I have not. I'm a slacker.
Boy, howdy. Um, so this was Trump's plan. Um, and it worked to some degree for what it was. He partnered with Netanyahu and went to several countries. For instance, he went to Morocco, and Morocco made a deal with Morocco that apparently there's been dispute over what part of the Western Sahara Morocco does or does not control. And the U.S. told them, if you will accept Israel as a sovereign nation and open trade with Israel and stop condemning them for war crimes, we'll give you control over Western Sahara and like a whole bunch of financial aid and shit like that. And Morocco said, okay. They then went to like other countries too, like Jordan, and the one that really stuck out was Sudan. Now, Sudan has been under sanctions from the UN and the U.S. because it was declared a sponsor state for terrorism. Well, the U.S. said, look, if you accept the Abraham Accords, if you accept Israel as a sovereign nation, and quit saying that they're guilty of war crimes against Palestinians and what have you, then we will remove you from this list of nations that sponsor terrorism. Well, Sudan was initially a little bit outraged, like we are not fucking terrorists. But once the U.S. threw in a couple $1 billion to seal the deal, they accepted it. This was the Abraham Accords. Now, Palestine rejected it because they were like, no, 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 because we're not. They will not accept Palestine as a sovereign state. They will not end. They said if for Israel, for them to sign the Abraham Accords, Israel had to agree to get their settlers out of the goddamn West Bank and to end the fucking occupation in Gaza, and the West Bank. And Israel refused to do that. In fact, Israel responded by increasing their occupation, increasing their settlement policy. So that's what happened with the Abraham Accords. This grand idea that he thought was so great was basically just going around bribing countries to accept Israel as a nation. Like I said, while he was logical about his approach to the current conflict, Jordan Peterson's fucking obligation to Trump on the whole thing, like, oh, it was a genius plan, it was great, it was going to solve the Middle East crisis, but the Gazans just wanted to, the Palestinians just wanted too much, and it's like, no, they don't want too much.
Well, I have to pull back onto the whole thing with Hamas, and even to this day, even to today, they will agree to a truce, but never to peace. And when you face with somebody like that, I mean, you're going to always have conflicts. Some little accords and some little agreements and stuff is never going to fix that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Hamas. So Hamas started as kind of a an Islamic resistance movement, right? It was kind of born out of like in Egypt they had, what was it, the Muslim Brotherhood. It was kind of born out of that. It was pretty much like just a revolutionary resistance party, you know, for a long time, from, well, at least for the first few years, until 1994, right? Um, in 1994, Baruch Goldstein, a Jewish settler in military fatigues, killed 29 Muslims in prayer at the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron in the West Bank during Ramadan. This resulted in widespread riots. Everybody's like, "What the fuck?" Right? And those riots caused an additional 19 Palestinians to be killed by Israeli forces. The Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Yitzhak Rabin, condemned the massacre, but fearing a confrontation with Hebron's violent settler community, he refused to withdraw them, and Hamas swore to avenge the deaths. In a communique, it announced that if Israel didn't discriminate between fighters and civilians, then it would be forced to treat the Zionists in the same manner. Treating like with like is universal principle. The Hebron massacre, as it became known, deeply changed the stance of Hamas. Made them super militant. For its first 7 years, it only attacked what it saw as military targets, right? Israeli soldiers, military installations. But after the massacre, it felt there was no more need to distinguish between military and civilian targets because, Israel don't care either.
Yeah,
Um,
that must be about the time I even started knowing about Hamas and Israel in conflict and shit, because that's all I've ever seen from Hamas for myself and ever heard of it is random missile fires from Gaza into Israel.
yeah, the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in the West Bank, Sheikh Ahmad Hajj Ali, later argued that there had not been the 1994 Ibrahimi Mosque massacre, there would have been no suicide bombings. In an interview in 1998, he stated that the suicide attacks began after the massacre committed by the terrorist Baruch Goldstein and intensified after the assassination of Yahya Ayash. Musa Abu Marzouk put the blame for the escalation on the Israelis, saying, quote, "We were against targeting civilians. Then after the Hebron massacre, we determined it was time to kill Israel's civilians. We offered to stop if Israel would, but they rejected that offer." Um, the massacre led to internal debate within Hamas on the usefulness of indiscriminate violence. In the Hamas writings, there's an explicit prohibition against indiscriminate harm to helpless people. The massacre at the mosque released them from this taboo and introduced a dimension of measure for measure based on citations from the Quran. So, this is how they carried from here on, right? Until around 2006. Now, in 2006, all of a sudden, they decided they were going to be political. And Israel decided they were going to allow the Palestinian people to have their own elections. Well, Hamas, who had been seen as a revolutionary force fighting an enemy, an oppressive enemy, you know, and had always done good by the people of Gaza. They said that they voted them in, like overwhelmingly voted them in. And then right after that, Hamas seems to make every decision Hamas made from this point on was um, of a deleterious effect to the Gazan people. You follow?
Well, yeah, I mean, the situation definitely hasn't gotten any better.
No, everything Hamas has done has caused a further reaction from it has been excuse for Israel to have like ever increasing actions, against so-called Hamas.
Well,
And
neither Israel nor Palestinian Authority recognized Hamas's victory.
well, of course not. They didn't. The election was stolen.
The elections are as they are. They never in question. Remember that.
The elections are stolen. The elections. I mean, it was the same rhetoric. They lost. They won in the West Bank. What was it? The IPO or LPO or whatever. But they in Gaza they lost to Hamas. And the UN said no, this election was pretty fair. Like this is one of the better representations of democracy. This was a fair election.
Not one single person can explain how the elections actually work, but okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, I assumed voting was voting.
No, they had some weird thing, man, where even the loser of the original vote could come back in a secondary vote and win some kind of stupid shit. It's something similar to what Alaska has for their elections, man.
You
It's
talking
weird.
about ranked voting?
Something like that, yeah. It's something similar to that. That's what I got from it when I read over it, but I couldn't even understand this shit.
So, but it seems that um, something happened within Hamas that made it start doing things intentionally to harm Palestine, to force is to suppose look, make it look like Israel's hands being forced. So stepping into my Alex Jonesian world of speculation, Jonestown, if you will, we have here in the United States the CIA. And during the 1980s, the Iran Contra, fiasco occurred. During this time, the CIA had operatives all over Central America. And what they would do is they would infiltrate like little rebellion groups, and they would start to escalate, they would escalate things with the local government, right? They would force confrontations so that regimes could be overthrown or land could be grabbed. Like it was a common thing. It's well known now that this happened. And the other end of what was happening was the CIA was doing a lot of shady shit in Iran too, and a lot of shit.
Yeah, Afghanistan.
Yeah, and Afghanistan. Pretty much everywhere the CIA, everything the light touches, they've done a lot too. Now,
Yeah. I
Israel,
was wondering why you went so far back in history to show that example, man.
because to me it's the it's the clearest example of what I'm getting at. Um, Israel has their own intelligence force, right? The Mossad, and around this time that Hamas rose started getting political instead of like just activists and committing murders. When they suddenly became political was around the time that the Nazi trials were over and fucking oil had been found in Gaza. And so you all of a sudden have these things from Hamas coming that it makes it like gives Israel all these excuses. So my speculation is that it's quite possible that Hamas has been infiltrated by the Mossad and that everything Hamas has done since the infiltration has actually been an Israeli uh, uh, like the burning of the Reichstag in Hitler's Germany, There. I've officially put my foot in my mouth, but that That's my speculation. I mean, if people can say whatever they want, then that's what I'm thinking at this point.
Well, that would be a play out of their holy playbook. I mean, they learned it from their God. If that's the case, you play both sides of the fence. You know, you're going to get the right result.
Yeah, the idea came to me when I kept hearing Piers Morgan ask, how does Hamas's actions on October 7th help the people of Gaza? And he's right. It doesn't. The only person it helps, Q bono, who benefits, is Israel. It gives Israel a reason. It gives Israel something to hide behind, and boy, are they hiding behind it. And I was surprised to find that I developed this theory all in my own brain. And then I was surprised to hear that Russia, that the Kremlin, has put forth a similar theory.
Or it could be Russia that got all this shit started so that we would spend all our money into yet another fucking backing of somebody else in a war.
Also, not out of the realm of possibility. Um, Russia and China, both together, are the ones who were bringing uh, motions to the UN for a ceasefire. Russia's got initially rejected because it didn't condemn Hamas. It didn't mention Hamas. Like so what?
Well, the UN has I don't know if it's a resolution or just an unwritten rule or something, but there's something about that they're not, they don't mention groups by name to that extent. They condemn actions and stuff, but they fall short of laying blame just in case they're wrong, kind of a thing.
Exactly. So the Russian resolution proposition wasn't out of character. It wasn't even unreasonable. It fell within UN guidelines, and
Yeah,
it
even
was
the latest ceasefire proposal doesn't
yeah.
mention either group by name.
And the European Union and the U.S. both said, "Well, no, it doesn't mention Hamas. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't specifically condemn Hamas." Which they really need that language there because this is what this is all about, right? It's about Hamas. It's not about pushing everybody out of Gaza. It's about Hamas. It's not about killing a bunch of women and children. That's unfortunate. Joe Biden even went so far as to say, "I doubt the numbers." Fuck Joe Biden. Um, but yeah, it's insane, man. It's like he says there's no, they don't have, we don't know that these numbers are real. So what happens? They release the names, the fucking names of these children that might not have died. We don't really know about the number. Fuck this shit. They're killing kids indiscriminately, almost purposefully. They bombed the shit out of that hospital a few weeks ago and claimed they didn't, that it was a Hamas rocket misfire, whatever, right? But then they went to a different hospital and bombed everything around it, as if to say, "Look, now we didn't bomb the hospital. What are you going to bitch about now?" Kind of saying, giving everybody a middle finger for blaming them for bombing the hospital, which they totally fucking did. And Israel has a long history of denying something and then later taking credit for it. This is it's their playbook. It's how they do it. It's what
I
they
don't
do.
know, man. I was looking at the satellite pictures, and there's not a whole lot of damage around that hospital that got hit. It's more fire damage and some stuff like that. But yeah, the building itself, it's fully intact. It's not like an actual airstrike actually hit it. I've kind of got to lean a little bit toward that side with that little bit of information. And then, if I were Israel's position and I was, blamed for blowing up a particular building, I would do something similar to show that, oh, fucker, I didn't hit it because if I wanted to hit it, I would have hit it. And if I don't want to hit it, I don't. This is the kind of control I have. I can destroy every fucking thing around it and not hit it. It's kind of a middle finger on the other side saying, no, motherfucker, I did not do this. We've got control over our shit. I could see it from that side too.
I believe they intentionally bombed that hospital, seeing as how they called and told them that they were going to.
That's the only thing that really matters. You make the phone call saying you're going to bomb a place, and that place gets bombed. You can't point the finger at somebody else. that right there is the smoking gun. All the rest of it's moot. But the whole show of we can bomb everything except for that. I still say that that's a show to them to try and say we didn't hit the other one because we have control over our shit to the point where we can destroy everything around it and not even touch it. I would do something like that myself. Is was the only reason I'm saying that. I don't say that out of any details or any knowledge or anything like that. It's pure speculation on actions that I would do myself in a similar situation.
Yeah, so while Brazil and China bring in another resolution that does condemn Hamas, the UN passes it. While this vote is 14 nations said no, everybody else said yes. Um, the While this was going on, Israel simultaneously began its ground invasion and increased the bombing like beyond anything the world's ever seen. So whether to let everybody know pretty much that regardless of what the UN says, they're going to continue. And then the day after the UN resolution, Netanyahu had a press release where he said the ceasefire is, there's going to be no ceasefire. The Americans didn't agree to a ceasefire after Pearl Harbor. The Americans didn't agree to a ceasefire after 9/11. We're not going to agree to a ceasefire now. And then he starts to get all biblical and shit. So yeah, it's the UN thing. There's no This resolution is kind of pointless. Um, it shows everybody where it shows the world where the different nations stand. But other than that, it does nothing. The Israel is under no obligation to follow said resolution, which I'm starting to talk risk sounding a bit like Trump. What's the point of the goddamn UN then?
The last resolution I saw calling for a ceasefire had 144 nations voting for it, 4 nations voting against it, and 44 nations abstaining from the vote. So, for the vast majority of the UN apparently wants a ceasefire, at least for humanitarian pause, to get humanitarian aid into place. Not necessarily to end the fight, but at least to get fucking help to the Palestinian people. The U.S. is one of the ones that surprisingly voted against that shit, simply because Hamas isn't mentioned. Fuck who's mentioned. You got people on the ground that's getting fucking bombed to shit, ain't got no food, ain't got no water. Fuck who's mentioned. Get help. Vote for a fucking ceasefire and get your boy Netanyahu to stop for a minute so you can get some help in there. But on the other side of that, you gotta look at both sides of the coin here. From the other side, if you give Hamas a minute to breathe, they're going to rearm, resupply, and plan their next attack. That's the view from the other side. If you give the bad guys enough time to reorganize, what are they going to do with that time? Uh, what would you do in that situation if you were, Hamas and you're fighting, against your opposing force? As soon as they give you a minute, you're going to restructure, move shit around, all that shit. You got free time to do it. Of course you're going to. And if a ceasefire gets voted in through UN and Israel, for some reason, has to agree, they're going to give a deadline. Okay, at midnight tonight or tomorrow, there's a ceasefire. Well, if you're Israel in that situation, what are you going to do? You're going to launch everything you have right up until the last fucking minute. And you're going to do it with increasing ferocity because that's all the time you have left to fight. So it's both sides of the story. Both sides of this have a valid viewpoint, but the big picture is the freaking people that didn't want to fight are getting destroyed in this, and they need help, and nobody is trying. Well, not nobody's trying to help. Is that nobody in that particular area, apparently Israel nor Hamas, give a fuck about the people that need the help.
Yeah, so apparently there are. It's reported that 5,000 women in Gaza are due to give birth this month. Um, the ones that have survived the bombing this far, and the fetus have survived the stress and the lack of water and the malnutrition. What did those babies do? What part of Hamas's plan did they take part in?
So you say 500 are due, right?
5,000.
5,000. Well, if we don't stop, that's going to be 5,000 new jihadis coming out in another 15 to 18 years.
And could you blame them?
Absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. That's going to be. That's not impossible. I mean, if they're born during this, and these are the stories that they're hearing where they're being raised, they're going to be jihadis, man. There's no question about it. Wouldn't you?
Which leads to this is I don't believe this is about taking out Hamas. This is about taking out Gaza. I
Well,
mean,
the things are pointing toward it. I mean, the oil. I mean, U.S. smells oil, and they're going to back anything to get it. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Did I just blow the surprise?
No, actually, I was in the process of putting weed into paper, and couldn't reach over to touch my push to talk button. Um, and in the explanation of that, I forgot what I was going to say anyhow.
Well,
uh,
it's about eliminating Gaza. It's definitely
oh
not about
yeah,
Hamas. Yeah.
yeah, because you know at this point in time, you have to if you're in there trying to take out Gaza, because Gaza the because I mean take out Hamas because Hamas killed 1,400 people, killed children, some of them supposedly beheaded. I don't know, and those are horrible things, right? That's a horrible thing to happen. But who's the badder person now? You know what I mean? Who's the worst? Who's worse now?
Well,
One of
if
them killed. One of them broke across a border supposedly and killed 1,400 people, including soldiers, civilians, children, grandmothers, Holocaust survivors. Killed 1,400 people. The other one is actively committing a genocide on a mass scale.
well, on that, as an American that watched the events of 9/11 happen before all the truth came out years afterwards, I was on the side of the fence of bomb them all to hell. Find out who did it, wipe them out, because they took out thousands of civilians that had no fucking say in whatever cause these people were backing. It was a horrible atrocity, and it needed retribution. And I was wholeheartedly behind it. I even tried to sign up so I could go do it. They just wouldn't take me. Luckily, so I can see it from the side of the fence from an Israeli point of view on that these guys came over the fence and wiped out 1,400 fucking people in a night. That's an atrocity. That shit needs to be dealt with. Blow them all to hell. I can understand it. I don't feel that way now, especially now that I've started to wait a little bit longer before I try to react to see what the truth actually is before I start throwing my weight around. But because 9/11 surprised me on that one. So yeah, don't overreact too fast. But yeah, I can see the side from the Israelis about that. I mean, it was a horrible event. They're going to want retribution. It needs to be paid for. Now, the extent that it is, and as coming, my own hindsight on it, I think it's a bit, like I said, I think it's a bit much, but I understand. And if they decide that this whole thing needs to be dealt with until every single fighter back there lays down their arms and, is surrendered, I would, I can understand it. I ain't gonna say I back it. I can't fully support it, but I can understand it.
Yeah, there's a tactician side of me that does understand total war, right?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, if I was the one that had that little tiny neighboring territory there that's the size of what was it, Manhattan, Long Island or Manhattan or something. I mean, these are small areas.
Long Island, yeah.
Yeah, Gaza is small. I mean, it's a city. It's not a country, that us Yanks over here think
The
of.
most
It's not
densely
even a state.
populated place on Earth, by the way.
Yeah, and it's not even the size of a state. It's not even the size of our smallest state. I think Israel is about the size of one of our smallest states. Israel as a whole. So if I was trying to root out an embedded organization out of a city, I wouldn't be coming in with airstrikes, because that's definitely not going to get the civilians of the city that aren't combatants to like you at all. I would come in and I would park a tank on every fucking street corner, and I would have a soldier standing every freaking 50 feet. You're talking about the fifth largest military on the planet in one of the smallest nations on the planet. They've got the manpower. They've got the force necessary to do this. And it's something that almost every nation on earth would back doing and come support if all you were doing was going in and parking a soldier every 10 feet to make sure nobody could fucking move or cause a harm or be armed and moving around while you went and routed these people out. You know who some of these people are. You know every freaking bit of leadership by face, by name. You probably had coffee with them at some point in time. It's a very small area. Go in there and root them out. You know, every nation that's in the UN would get lend soldiers to an operation like that. Park a soldier every freaking 5 feet. Nothing can move without you knowing about it. You would find everybody you needed to find. There's no place they can hide. And then when you get them all, you take them out, you go put them in prison, and then you pull back out and you leave it to the people. They would love you for it.
Help them rebuild, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I mean, you've got all the riches of some of the richest nations on earth backing you up there in that little itty bitty teeny tiny place because, hey, all those other nations, the U.S., Brits, Canada, they helped you build it. You know, hell, England's been after that land since, 1095.
So yeah, Israel has this thing, and I keep hearing this term, and because I'm a fraud and a hack, I failed to look into it to see if it's like an official thing. But there's a term I keep hearing from the Palestinian side of the Israeli government every couple of years mows the grass. Have you heard this, Mike?
No, I haven't.
Basically, they carry out strikes and whatnot in Gaza, and to thin out the population, right? To keep it from reaching a critical mass. Um, apparently it's referred to as mowing the grass. If it's something that the Israelis are actually carrying out as a policy, and from what I can see in the record of the airstrikes and whatnot going back decades, it does seem to be they have a policy of named the one of the worst things I've heard since the final solution from the Nazis. The mowing the grass, like it is the most cruel thing you could say about the weirdest way you can talk about eliminating fractions of a population to keep them more manageable. This is madness, I mean, it's fucking insane. And I keep hearing this, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way, but it's apparently this is what's going on. And
Let me,
I guess they finally decided it's time to till the soil.
okay, let me start off with I fully agree on the how horrible that shit is. But I have to put out on the other side of that devil's advocate. Everybody is prone to that type of behavior of putting a moniker on a horrible thing that you have to do or that you feel that you have to do, even to the point of getting up and going to work, paying your taxes, all that good stuff. I mean, we humans do that. We name stuff. And I can see it from that side, going on from that mentality of how us humans like to name things, even inanimate things like our cars and stuff. We name everything. So if you have that little group that keeps popping its head up and they keep growing in numbers every once in a while, I can kind of see where they would give it that term and use it. Kind of like, yeah, it's time to go pull some weeds. Kind of mow the grass. I mean, I can get the catch. I don't think it was ever meant to be something that caught on to become popular. It's probably something that started just with the military guys, having to go in and do their job from their perspective. So I can see it. I mean, it is horrible. It sucks, but yeah, it's what humans do.
Well, we have to, I guess, we can look at what they're doing elsewhere. Well, see if this matches up with what they're saying. What are they saying about what's going on elsewhere? Um, have you looked into any with Syria and Lebanon and Iran?
Well, the only thing I've seen there is from where these other nations, like Syria and Iran, backing other launches from other nations th- to attack both U.S. forces that are have bases that are in other countries like Iraq and Syria, and so everybody's trying to get in. Then I don't know why Syria got brought into it early. From the first thing I heard about Syria was Israel bombed their fucking airports, but
Yeah,
I know Yemen launched some drones and some missiles, and I know there's a group from Iran that's launching shit from Lebanon, but Syria I didn't know anything about until like I said, Israel bombed their airports out of nowhere.
yeah. So this war is expanding across the Middle East, and in some places, Israel it didn't help itself any because it's been attacking. It's been attacking people. Um,
U.S. Special Forces is on the ground in Israel.
yep, yep, and they're doing that because of Iran and Lebanon. And now let's talk a little bit about Lebanon, right? What is going on with Lebanon? What's happening? Why is Lebanon a problem? Well, because Israel has like they're habitual line steppers, right? There was an agreement that they made a maritime agreement for the whatever fucking sea it is, you know. They made an agreement with Israel where the border would be. And then they made an agreement with Israel where the land border would be for Lebanon. And well, Israel keeps saying, "No, no, we want this part too." So they keep like setting up perimeters and attacking there's like a demilitarized zone that Israel keeps bombing across, and then Lebanon will send bombs back across. And because this is right there next to Syria, Israel has started accusing Syria of supporting this shit in Lebanon, and Iran supports Syria, and so they were like, you know what, Syria, before you even think about doing anything, we're just going to bomb your airports and cripple travel in and out of your country. All right, they're bombed, and then they moved on a little bit. They crippled Syria and moved on for really not really any good reason except for kind of a warning across the bow to Lebanon and Iran. Iran has directly threatened the U.S. troops on the ground. He has said that if this does not stop, if there is not an immediate ceasefire, there will be a reaction like the world has never known, and not even the U.S. will be safe from the fire. So,
Yeah, and they're flexing their muscle. They're moving their military around and shit. They're getting ready.
yeah, man, we might not be here next week. So yeah, it's Israel. Israel's fucking actions are causing the rest of the goddamn world to go up in arms.
Just fucking figure. Some third world country's rusty ass rocket's going to be the one that starts the nuclear holocaust. All it takes that one. And of course, retaliation would happen. And then, if either if us or Russia decides to launch a missile, mutually assured destruction is going to kick in there. It's automatically programmed.
Yeah, I think we're closer to World War now than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, I ain't called it World War III yet, but it's definitely the world at war. There is war almost everywhere. That whole daggone hemisphere over there is wrapped up now.
And and then you have Netanyahu using such favorite terms that remind us of the old days, such as axis of evil. You
Oh
know,
God.
and people have said when you draw a line in the sand like that, when you say these group of people is good and this people group of people is evil, then those who are good can do no evil, and those who are evil, well, they can do no good.
And that doesn't matter in their storybook. I don't know why they make such a big deal out of that, but yeah, when you got the sides on there, it's you're either for me or against me, You either stand with Israel or you support terrorist attacks. Fuck, I was sitting there thinking I was listening to Anakin.
Exactly, dude. Like I've been wanting to make a meme of Anakin and be like, if Anakin, of with like a Israeli flag, like if Israel was what was it? What did I have? What was it? Oh yeah, if Anakin Skywalker was a nation. That was one of the titles I was throwing around for the episode. Because this is what it's like when remember when Anakin killed the Sand People? He killed them all, not just the men either, but the women and the children. you know, um, yeah. There's I could go on for a while drawing comparisons between Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, and the nation of Israel.
Then it seems that every damn day they pull more shit out of the fascist playbook, man. Every fucking day.
Yeah, man. They've rebuilt the Warsaw Ghetto, except now it's in Gaza. They changed the word from Jew to Hamas Palestinian, and there we go. Like they just they just walking around with their little book, taking notes all through the Holocaust. Like, oh yeah, hey, this is a pretty good idea. Man, I really hate starving to fucking death in a little box. Man, we're gonna use this. Like, what the
And they are
fuck?
pushing that whole narrative that Hamas came after their children. They came after their children. They hurt their children. And it's us or them. They are the great enemy.
Did they
Not
kill?
mentioning
Did
how
they
many
kill
children
fucking
that they
four
killed.
thousand of them? Did they kill 4,000 of your children? I don't fucking think so.
But yeah, it's the page out of the fascist playbook. It's we have the mythical past. They are the enemy. It's us or them. You're either for us or against us. They're coming for our children. We got the fear, we got the past, we got every freaking thing. It's about the state. It's for Israel, not for you, not for the people, for Israel.
Yeah, and that's the whole problem with this old it's like everybody would be fine, like the except for Hamas. Hamas was at their time anyway they were a religious fucking theocracy as well. But like the majority of Palestinians, they're not like all that. They don't you know, they don't want an ethno state. They just want a state, right? They just want a place they can live, And Israel's like, no, this has to be a state for Jews. Jews have to have priority, and that's just not fair, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of Islam. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a huge fan of Islam, but when I say I don't people have if group of people sets themselves above another group of people, be it because of their skin color or their gender or their sexual preferences or their fucking religious preference, like I don't like religion. I disagree with it on a whole, but I don't really want to live in a world without it. Exactly. Like, I mean, look at what it gives us things like, the Taj Mahal, the Sistine Chapel, fucking cool ass mythology. I mean, it'd be like living in a world without Marvel or DC. We have all these cool stories from different religions all over, all these heroes, all these like truly human struggles in these religions, right? Like, I really wouldn't want to live in a world without religion, but I will not live in a world ruled by religion. You follow? And that seems
Absolutely.
and that seems to be what Israel wants. And that's not cool, man. And they flout it like it's if you disagree with that, then you're anti-Semitic. And it's like, hold up, I'm cool with Jews being Jews and Jews doing what they want to do, but to enforce your will upon others or make it to where people who don't have your same religious views are treated differently, treated as lesser citizens, as is the case, then that's not cool. You know what I mean?
You know what we need over there, man?
Go on.
We need another empire. I know that leads into the earlier, being joke about it, but seriously, I'm sitting here looking again at this little map uh, progression here of the historical regions of the Mediterranean, and it starts out at like 2500 BCE and ends sometime about 500 CE. So it doesn't go quite modern, but it does show the entire growth pattern of all the earlier empires and the nations of the region all around the Mediterranean, and included is Israel, and all the way to the points where the 12 tribes of Israel, it even shows them for a brief moment in history. The interesting thing I'm noticing here is that out of all this history, Israel is but a blip most of the time over there. And the only time I know of that, that particular little region of, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and all that has ever known peace is during the control of one of the large empires, be it the Assyrians, Archaemenid, fucking Roman, Ottoman, whichever one you want to call it. Those are the only times of extended peace that region has ever seen.
I don't know. You can't look at like cases of Jewish rebellion, like for instance Masada, and say that the place experienced peace. There was a lot of uprisings, Jewish uprisings, and like everybody kind of like was rebelling against the Romans, but they were at least united in that front, right?
Well, a couple of rebellions, that might last, a total of 20 years in a period of, 400 or 500 years of a particular rule. I'd say that's pretty much extended peace, man. You mean everybody. We have riots here in the U.S., but you would have to say that on the whole, U.S. has been a peaceful nation for its existence.
What do you know about Masada? Sitting here thinking about it, it brings up an interesting point. What do you know
I
about Masada?
actually don't know anything about that. I was just
Okay,
sitting there
so
looking at these with the Suclid Empire, the Macedonians, and all that stuff, and I do remember those. In history, reading about those particular empires, and they spanned hundreds of years, and they had wars on their borders with neighboring empires, but very little infighting.
So Masada was a fort, like the fortress type thing, in somewhere over that way, over thereabouts around Israel or whatever, during the Roman Empire. And there was a Jewish rebellion. I believe it was during the Maccabees Revolution, and they kind of got cornered and holed up at this fortress. Well, the Roman army came in and couldn't get to them. So what they did was they blocked off, they built a wall, they blocked off access to water, food, support, and the Massadans eventually all committed suicide. Um, but you see the Israelis doing this with Gaza. They built a wall around them, they've cornered them there, they've deprived them of water, food, support. And it's working. The Masada, that siege warfare, that's what happened at Masada, and that's what's happening now. I just found it was, well, when I mentioned Masada, it kind of clicked in my brain. Is hey, there's a connection there.
One of these Arab nations over there, and I think it's Iran. Don't quote me on that. I haven't. I've got to go back and look, and I don't think I saved that particular page. But I do remember this morning, just a couple of hours ago, looking through these reports and stuff. And one of these Arab nations is actually calling for all other Arab nations to stop imports of oil, food, and water and stuff like that, supplies to Israel.
Good.
Yeah, I say so about myself. If Israel wants to fight this, let them fight it with their own shit. I think everybody needs to pull out and just let the region fight itself out. Let who has it have it.
Yeah, if this is the type of war, this is what they see as warfare. If this is acceptable to Israel, if Israel does not see this as a war crime, then let it happen to them.
Yeah, I'm fully on board. And speaking of war crime, didn't you say something about a UN thing about war crimes and shit? I didn't see nothing about that.
Okay, so hold on. There there is a refugee camp in Gaza called Jabelia, and it's like there's fewer and fewer places for people to go in Gaza that aren't
That
rubble.
sounds familiar.
Yeah. Um, Israel bombed the shit out of Jabelia, killed like 159 people or something like that. And Jesus, the death toll's up to 91,000. I mean 9,100 now. Um, but yeah, Jabelia, fucking they killed like 100 and something people, and they were every damn one of them was civilians. Most of them were children. You know.
Isn't
Then they continued the next day to bomb it again, and the
is, is,
UN, huh?
isn't that the same refugee camp that uh, this whole thing pretty much started from, where Hamas got its beginnings? That were one of the first whatever the hell that thing is.
Intifada.
Intifada. Isn't that where the first one started at? That refugee camp?
I think so, maybe. Um, but I mean, that doesn't. That was the first Intifada was like in the 80s, man.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It wasn't that the same one that it was in the beginnings of Hamas. What is Hamas video thing from Al Jazeera? Wasn't that the same damn one where they say they got to start from?
It might have been, but that's no. I mean, this isn't a base of Hamas now. This is just like it was mostly like fucking. It's not the red crescent.
No, that would be a symbolic thing from Israel if that's the case.
It's symbolic just to kill children. That's cool, right? Then why are they mad at Hamas for fucking October 7th?
Now I'm just saying that that particular target, if that is where, if it's the same camp, I could see why they would be on a target list. Now, why they actually targeted it, that's a whole nother can of worms, and I'm definitely not supporting that. But I can support why it would be picked as a target if that was the same. I cannot remember names, and these names are definitely out of my wheelhouse of trying to remember. But that did the sound. It sounded familiar, like I had heard that name recently, and that's the only camp that I remember hearing about is in that story. So if that's the same one, then it's a symbolic thing, and I can see why it'd be on their list of targets.
Yeah. So I mean, I get that. I could see that, but that is what the UN is finally saying. This might be a war crime. There's like several UN officials who that their job is to observe things, be like, does this go against the Geneva Convention? And they're saying that this one is quite likely a war crime. There's going to be more to come on that. They're going to start debating that. Probably they're probably already debating it.
Reporters Without Borders is apparently filing a war crime complaint about the deaths of
Oh
journalists.
yeah, that's another thing. And not only journalists, their families. Yeah, yeah, they're targeted them, man. Like a couple of journalists here and there, I'd be like, okay, that's just that's collateral damage thing. But they're up around like 30 or something journalists being killed. It's starting to look a little suspicious. And it's all wouldn't you know it? It's all journalists from like Al Jazeera and whatnot who have been critical of Israel this whole time.
They're considering it to possibly be war crimes as of 7 hours ago.
Yep. And you know what's going to change? Not a goddamn thing. Nobody's going to do shit. Israel, except for Iran and shit. As soon as UN declares it a war crime, that Iran's hands are clean in whatever they do. You know.
Well, Iran accuses U.S. of being the main cause of the crimes.
Well, they're not entirely wrong.
It wouldn't be out of our character, to be sure. The U.S. is big about saying that you can't do something and then doing it.
Right? The only weapons of mass destruction that were in Iraq were the ones we dropped on them.
And you know how how horrible we think interrogation is. It's so bad that we won't allow it on U.S. soil, so we do it on other people's soil.
Yep. Guantanamo Bay. And what was the other one? Abu Dhabi or whatever? Abu Dhabi?
I think, yeah, I think so. I think that's something like that. Yeah.
Where we gave birth to ISIS. You know, and the world learned nothing. Well, Israel learned nothing from our bumbling about, apparently. It's like they're using it for a playbook.
Well, yeah. I mean, if your big brother's showing you how to rule the world and how you're supposed to deal with shit, then that's what you're going to do. I mean,
Well, Mike, is there anything else you want to cover on this?
oh, there's plenty of shit we could say, but I think we need to find an end to it soon.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can keep, in future episodes, we can give little brief updates of things.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing thing. We probably need to touch up on as it happens since we've stuck our nose into it.
Yeah. And of course, as the genocide increases, maybe there'll be enough to do a whole nother one. But I think we're going to move on to Trump now. I mean, not today, but we're going to move on to Trump finally. I can focus more time on watching Mike Lindell and what have you.
At least it'll be more interesting.
Well, I'll still feel like I'm being lied to.
Oh yeah, but you shouldn't get that dirty taste in your mouth. Fucking hearing about kids dying every fucking 5 minutes.
Well, at least less of them, right?
It'll just be rumors of them in pizza parlors.
Oh boy, yeah. God damn it, we're gonna have to talk about Pizzagate.
And always remember, folks, Epstein didn't kill himself.
No, he did not. I loved those memes that were going around where it was like, a picture was like, look at the top left corner, look at the right corner, look at the desk, look at the apple. Epstein didn't kill himself. Like it was like Rick rolling somebody for a while and hitting them with the Epstein didn't kill himself. It was great.
Well, hopefully, we'll find out. Then this gets over with, and we don't all wind up, forming ourselves into a big giant theocracy. Or we can avoid actual World War III. But yeah, hopefully we'll be here next week with some Trump news, or next week or two at least, with some Trump news and some updates. And if not, it's been nice knowing you folks.
Hell yeah. I would say fuck around and find out, but I guess we're finding out, so. Till next time, guys.
Let me take you to the General Assembly Emergency Special Session at the United Nations on the protection of the Palestinian civilian population. These are live pictures from the United Nations. This is the ambassador to the UN for Palestine. Let's listen in.
Mr. President, colleagues, let us all remember we are meeting here while Palestinians in Gaza are under the bombs. Remember that you are speaking while families are being killed, while hospitals are coming to a halt, while neighborhoods are being destroyed, while people are fleeing from one place to another with nowhere safe to go. I urge you to choose your words carefully and to act accordingly. For all those mobilized against an even greater man-made humanitarian catastrophe or of a regional spillover, and these are worthy goals, we say, stop the bombs or both will happen. Stop the bombs and save lives, as the President of the General Assembly has indicated. All lives, lives of children, of civilians, of 2.3 million civilians in the Gaza Strip. Mr. President, in Gaza, a father tells his daughter about the birthday he was planning for her and asks her not to miss it. A mother laments, "My children died before they had a chance to eat." The thoughts that cross the mind of a mother in the face of such grief. 3,000 children in Gaza were killed by Israel in the last almost 3 weeks. I repeat, 3,000 children, innocent children, angels, killed in Gaza during the last 3 weeks. A man embraces his mother and pleads like a child. "Come back, I beg you. Come back, and I will take you wherever you want." He hugs her and can't let go. But there is no time to mourn. More death is on the way. 1,700 women were killed by Israel in the last 2 weeks. A young man wrote, "We will not leave Gaza. We will only leave Gaza to join the heavens." A few days later, he did. 7,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel in the last almost 3 weeks. 70% of all those killed are women and children. Almost all killed are civilians. Is this the war some of you are defending? Let me repeat, is this the war that some of you are defending? Can this war be defended? These are crimes. This is barbarism. If you do not stop it for all those who were killed, stop it for all those whose lives we can still save. Jinan, a little girl under the rubble, shouts at the people coming to rescue her. "What took you so long?" There are 900 Palestinian children under the rubble, alive or dead, wondering what is taking so long, wondering if any help is on the way. Anas, a little boy who is known as Anus, crawled from under the rubble, not to find light, but more darkness. Devastations and death all around him. His ordeal has only started, not ended. 1,600 Palestinians are under the rubble, and no one can reach them to save them or bury them. A doctor speaks of a term coined during this war: wounded child with no surviving family. 80 Palestinian families have lost 10 or more of their members. Sometimes up to 45 members of the same family were killed. 18,000 people are wounded, many treated in hospital hallways, if at all, with no anesthesia. Paramedics who have seen death time and time again break down and cry. This time is just too much. UN staff, humanitarian personnel, and doctors are standing their ground and paying the ultimate price for it. This memory is honored by some as if a natural disaster had killed them, not a UN member staff. As hospitals turn into morgues, doctors and patients alike wonder, is help on the way? Is help on the way? They are not listening to the explanations of some leaders on why the war has to go on. They just hear the bombs. They just feel the blast. They just face all this death trying to survive or to honor the pledge they took to save lives with no means to do so. People are ordered to evacuate. They look at their children. Should we head south? Will we be bombed on the way or once there? Should we go to a hospital courtyard, a UN school, a church, a mosque, sleep in our car in the streets? But bombs are everywhere. What choices do you make as a parent when there are only impossible choices, when death is everywhere, devastation is everywhere? A man stands in front of his house, turned into rubble yet another time. After a long pause, he asks, how do you bury a house? Israel has destroyed over 40% of all homes, making an entire population homeless and displaced. 1.4 million people, in the hope to forcibly transfer them outside the territory. The Israeli foreign minister came to the Security Council and said, this meeting should conclude with a clear message. Bring them home. For millions of Palestinians, there is no home to go back to. For thousands, there is no family left to embrace. Not by an act of God, but by the acts of a government represented here in this chamber. He spoke of families and their pain. There is not a single family in Gaza that has not endured epic suffering. He told you horrible it was to kill civilians, just before justifying the killing of Palestinian civilians by the thousands. He spoke of the fear felt by people when rockets are launched. Israeli bombs have not spared a single square meter of Gaza. He believes the difference between civilization and barbarism is who is doing the killing or how they do it. He believes the laws of humanity and of our international law-based order apply to others but not to Israel. That they protect Israeli lives and allow the killing of Palestinians and taking Palestinian lives. He believes Israel can pretend it is abiding by the very laws it is breaching live on your TV screens and before your eyes. That if you say Hamas enough times, the world will not be able to object to wiping off from the face of earth entire families, 4 generations at a time, or to a siege where you let in enough humanitarian aid to pretend you have a sense of humanity, but nowhere enough to address the immense needs that are growing exponentially as you keep bombing a besieged territory. He says, release the hostages and takes 2 million Palestinian hostages. Let me translate these numbers. Compared to the population of Gaza, this is the equivalent of 28,000 Israelis killed, including 12,000 children and 6,800 women, 72,000 wounded, 5.6 million displaced. Is it more shocking now? More unacceptable? More outrageous? Why some feel so much pain for Israelis and so little pain for us, the Palestinians? What is the problem? Do we have the wrong faith? The wrong skin color? The wrong nationality? The wrong origin? Let me address all those who have, in these past few days, explained why one should not call for a ceasefire. How can representatives of states explain how horrible it is that 1,000 Israelis were killed and not feel the same outrage when 1,000 Palestinians are now killed every day? 1,000 Palestinians killed every day. Why not feel a sense of urgency to end their killing? Nothing can justify war crimes, crime against humanity, and genocide. Nothing can justify the killing of a single Palestinian child. Nothing. Nothing at all. Why not feel a sense of urgency to end our killing? Nothing can, as I said, justify war crimes. You are setting us back 80 years by trying to justify what Israel is doing now. How naive one has to be, or how hypocritical to pretend they don't know Israel is voluntarily killing Palestinian civilians. Who can believe that those killed by Israel are, for 70% children and women, and that entire families were killed while Israel is trying to minimize civilian death? They kill all of us. They kill thousands of us, and they say they are trying to minimize killing civilians. How would it look like if they were trying to maximize killing Palestinian civilians? If killing 7,000 is to minimize, killing 700,000 would be possible to maximize? We don't need you to offer us semantic reassurances about IHL and protection of civilians. We need you to honor these norms. Honor these norms, not recall them only to justify their breach seconds later. This selective outrage is outrageous and needs to stop, and need to stop now. These people you watch on your screens for a few minutes a day, every night, while they are being slaughtered, they have survived decades of military occupation, a 16 years long blockade, and 5 wars in the Gaza Strip. They built and rebuilt their lives and their homes again and again against all odds, despite tremendous suffering. They are walking miracles. How could you leave them to be killed once again? The answer to the killing of Palestinian civilians is not the killing of Israeli civilians. And the answer to the killing of Israeli civilians is not the killing of Palestinian civilians. Vengeance is a dead end. The only path forward is justice. The only path forward is justice. Justice for the Palestinian people. Don't distort the law. Don't bend it. Don't break it. Don't betray it to accommodate Israel. Uphold it, and uphold it high. This is what we are here for as a United Nations, to save future generations from the scourge of war. Uphold it for the sake of all nations, for the credibility of these United Nations. Mr. President, Wael al-Dahduh was reporting on the massacres in Gaza. For those of you who do not, who is Wael al-Dahduh? He is the field correspondent of Al Jazeera in the Gaza Strip. As he's been doing relentlessly for days now, when he received the news of an Israeli airstrike that killed his wife, his son, and his daughter, he did something many parents do in these circumstances. He spoke to his son, waiting for an answer that never came. He told him, "Didn't you tell me you wanted to be a journalist?" His son wanted to be a journalist, even though journalists are targets in Palestine. Remember Shireen Abu Akleh? Now, the dream of the son will haunt the father. Wael said a few words that I want you to hear well. He said, "They took their vengeance out on our children." He then said in a heartbreaking voice, "Malish, allow me to explain it to you. Literally, it means that's okay. But let me tell you what I believe he meant. Let me do it in Arabic. تبا لواقع تقتل فيه غزة."
Shame on this reality where Gaza is being slaughtered again.
تبا لكل من
Shame
لا يحترم إنسانيتنا.
on those who do not have respect to our humanity, our dignity, our suffering. Shame on those who justify the acts of the criminal, all those who stand by the predator, or justify or give condolence to the victim, explaining that the killer is not responsible. Shame on those who abandoned our people as we are reeling under these massacres. Shame if a word of truth is not uttered. Shame if I leave the field rather than defending our people, innocent people. God is our rock, and He is the dispenser of all affairs.
Finally, I appeal to all of you. Vote to stop the killing. Vote for humanitarian aid to reach those whose very survival depends on it. Vote to stop this madness. You have a chance to do something, to give an important signal. Choose justice, not vengeance. Choose to defend the law, not justify its breach. Choose peace, not more wars. Vote to put an end to almost 3 weeks of the worst double standards we have seen in decades. To restore some credibility of this place and the rules it is supposed to embody. Do not miss this chance. Lives are hanging in the balance, and every life is sacred. Please save lives, save lives, save lives. Vote for our draft resolution, and I thank you.
Watching Al Jazeera, we're bringing you coverage of a General Assembly emergency special session on the protection of the Palestinian civilian population. That was the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, giving a very strong and powerful speech there, telling emotional stories of describing the lives of people in Gaza. His voice breaking as he told of 7,000 Palestinians killed since October the 7th. 70% of them, he said, were women and children. He said, these are crimes, this is barbarism. Stop it, he said, for all those lives we can still save. He